Alright, this is Pat Martin with another Dex demo, and in this demo what I'm going to do is go through some of the new TauCharts charts. And what I've got over here is the TauCharts website is up, and it's a really nice charting package. And what they've done is they've tried to map the grammar of graphics over into JavaScript, and they have really nice things like facets and guides, and they really paid a lot of attention to how the different components interact, and they have pretty good ability to filter. They have a plugin system, and what I'm going to do is show how this integrates into Dex.js and Dex itself. So let me go over here, and what I've done is I've created the TauCharts demo directory, cd to the directory, downloaded the current repository out of Git, and I'm going to kick off dex.jar with 12 gigs of RAM just in case I need it. And generally you don't need even nearly that much, but I just don't want to risk it since I'm doing a demo and I get pretty deep in these things and I hate to have to do them over. So going to throw a lot of memory at it. And let me go ahead, kick Dex off, and let me get this sized where I'm using most of the real estate, but not all of it, because I'm going to switch back and forth here between the browser and Dex. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to load up just a basic sine cosine project. That way everybody understands the data. It's a sine wave, it's a cosine wave side by side. Whoops, I'm in the wrong place there. So I'm going to go into the demo under visualization, and then there's going to be a TauChart section, and I'm going to go ahead and load this just because everybody understands this data. So first thing it does is it creates a series for sine and a series for cosine, injects the angle here, and then the value. So it's basically, well, I'll go ahead and execute it. We can look directly at it. So basically we have two series. We have the angle starting at negative 360 all the way to 360 in increments of 1 degree, and there's the value. So I'm going to go over here to the scatter plot, and this guy, so he's already rendered. It looks like I'm going to have to re-execute it. So all these charts will render, and what I did is I selected all 5 of the chart windows, so that way I'm going to see the input in each one as it gets populated. So I'm going to wait until all 5 of the charts are populated. Very good. And I'm going to jump over to the scatter plot first. So kind of looks like a line plot just because the points are really close together here. But one of the really nice things about TauCharts is I really love these filters. So we can quickly select the starting angle, the range that we want to see, and this stuff is going to just update, near real time here. We can filter on value, and what's nice, even though you may not be graphing something in a TauChart and you can't see it with this particular data set, but you get the ability to filter on it even though it may not be an active participant on a chart. And that's something I didn't even realize was missing in some of the other charting packages until I saw it. It's kind of like Tableau. You can filter on things that aren't necessarily present on the screen. So and that's really powerful. So over here we can turn on and off the series, and that works really nice. But that's about all I'm going to show for the sine cosine. We got the line chart, really just more the same, only it's a line chart instead of the scatter. We got the stack bar chart, looks familiar. We've got the bar chart, and just laying these bars out side by side. Really nice tooltips as well. And over here we've got the area chart. So this was just to get you acquainted with some of the basics. So I'm going to go into some more interesting demonstrations now. So we'll start off with a pretty famous data set, which is the iris data set, and it's essentially a bunch of measurements around flowers and stuff like that. So This one's a little different because instead of getting a legend that has a categorical set of values, what we have is a continuous scale. So don't really like the default. That's really not working for me. So what we can do here is we can go into the configuration and we can say, okay, well, I want to select another color map. So maybe I'll select Crayola 120. That's even worse. So really probably what I want is a continuous, is one of the color maps. It's going to map pretty well to a continuous scale. So I guess I'll pick whatever this PU blue. I'm not sure what those colors are, but it's definitely a better color scale for this type of continuous stuff. So we've got a lot of color scales that we can pick from. Let's see, we got red, white, and blue, which, believe it or not, makes a lot of sense in certain cases, and you can definitely see things that are further away from each other on the scale here. And let's see, we've got white to blue, and let me just go ahead and settle on something here. I guess I'll go with that. Kind of hate that. Let me just stick with red, yellow, blue. I think that's a pretty good one. Yeah, I kind of like that. So okay. So some of the other stuff we can do. Let's say we prefer this to be blue, yellow, red. We can just go over here, reverse the color map, and there it is. Let's see. Really, in Dex, things like scatter plot, line plot, with respect to the TauCharts, is really nothing more than a setting, and we can actually switch this stuff around. It may not make sense, but bar chart looks okay. Horizontal bar may or may not. Yeah, it looks fine. Whoops. Switch it over to area. It's not really a line series like that, so it kind of looks a little funky there. But still, it rendered fine. That doesn't quite make sense either. So I'm going to go ahead and switch this back to our original scatter plot. And let's see. Next type of thing that I'm going to do. So what we're doing over here is we're mapping sepal length to petal length. Well, we can switch that stuff around. So let's say we don't want to see this on a continuous scale. So I'll just go over here and I'll say, okay, I just want to see the species side by side. In that case, maybe I want to switch back to a different color map because maybe I don't want variations of blue. So instead, maybe I'll switch over to one of the D3 color maps, category 10. And maybe I won't reverse it because I like the beginning colors in that color map really have a lot of separation from one another, so that's nice. And okay, so we're coloring by species, and I've got the x-axis, which is currently sepal length, but let's switch it over to petal length. So x and y are both that, and that makes sense. We can see that side by side, and maybe we'll just compare the two lengths. So now we see an entirely different view of the world here based off of those. We can go here and we can enable the trend lines. We can disable them over here. Really like this feature, and I like the plugin modules, and let's play around with different. It's not a whole lot of difference here in these cases, but also these filters are really awesome. I can't get over how awesome it is. That's actually what really got me excited about these charts is I realize there's a whole lot of pretty charting systems out there, but as far as the systems that really let you do some powerful exploratory analysis in the web world, kind of few and far between. They're not that easy to use, and this really was a snap to integrate. It was really nice and truly a testament to these guys' attention to design here. So really nice guys too. I've talked with them in email and in a forum back and forth a couple times, and really nice guys. So anyway, let's go over here and let's see, what am I doing over here? Not sure. Well, that would be Alexa talking back to me here. Not sure if that picked up on the speaker here, but Okay, let's see, what else do I want to do here? Yeah, let's not be done here. Let's play around with the min max size a little bit. So I'll make these things pop a little more, and maybe I'll size it based off of see, we got the links here, sepal width. So we'll make it a function of sepal width, and let's see, I'm not sure how much distance we want. Well, doesn't seem to be producing much separation here. They're pretty close together, but we do see that there is a varying color scale here. So I am going to move on. So I'm going to close out the config window here, and let's open up a data set. AIDS deaths, kind of a sad data set here, but still it's pretty interesting data when looked at through these visualizations. So here we have the documentation. I like to associate documentation with any of the, I don't do it all the time, but I like to associate documentation with the examples. And this just goes through, tells you what each one of these tasks are doing. So we're reading the data, the AIDS death data set, describing the data. So I'm going to execute this, and what we can see here just basically tells us, what the basic data types are. And sometimes we'll end up with a problem where 99% of them will be valid doubles, but there'll be something that is kind of out of scope, doesn't match, and it'll make the whole field downgrade to a string. And then some charts may not handle that appropriately. So here we see that this looks pretty well behaved. So we have 840 of these, 840 of those. Not all the cases. Let's see. I'll read that. So 840 strings. Anything can be a string. Looks like there's some cases that that aren't numbers. So over here we can view the values over here, and we can see that I see what the problem is. There's commas in here. So the next task here is a regular expression that just simply takes the columns out, or it takes the commas out rather. And then what we're doing over here is we're just selecting those columns that we care about. So we're going to start off with geography, then year, then cases, rate, population. And year is just four digits, and by default JavaScript's not going to recognize that as a time date. It's just going to say it's a number. So what we're doing is we're just giving it a month and a day, and now JavaScript will recognize that, or Dex will recognize that as a date and treat it as such. So this is what we see. There's a whole boatload of geographies here, or different states, and we can quickly sift through through the years that we want to see through these very, very powerful filters. And basically we see each one laid on top of each other with the number of AIDS cases for that year. And then we hover over, we can see that's California. New York has the most number of cases. And if we wanted to, we could quickly get to some very important information, like like show me where the most cases are coming from. So we can see Florida, wow, my home state, and New York. Okay, and it looks like New York is going down over time. Looks like Florida's is going down, but it's kind of struggled along the way. Pretty useful information, but it's also a function of population. So maybe instead we want to take a look and see who has the worst rate, and then looks like there's only one District of Columbia, but the population is such that their number of cases are still low. So pretty interesting information we can quickly get to, but maybe we want to make that information visible to where you don't have to do all that filtering. So what we could do here is we just go over here, we'll configure it, and let's say, okay, so what we're going to do. So maybe what we'll do is, instead of having geography over here on the legend, we'll move that over to the y-axis. So I'm going to go ahead and move geography to the y-axis. So it's still on color, but what we can see is it's also on the y there. And along the x, we'll just make that time. We'll make that the year. And for color, I'm gonna color it by the rate, and maybe I'll size it by the population. So it's having to think about that, so I'm gonna have to wait for that to catch up. And I'll size it by population. Sorry about coughing into the microphone here. Allergies are kind of kicking up here. And that color map for a continuous scale doesn't make sense. So as the rate increases, which is what I'm gonna make that red. It's kind of intuitive, and I really don't want to focus on the states that don't really have a problem. So, well, maybe I'll do both. Maybe we'll go red, white, and blue, and then so let that guy refresh over there. And really, I want it red when there's a problem. So I'm gonna reverse the color map. And let that guy update. And really, to me, in some cases I might only want to see the problem, so maybe I would switch this over to a white to red color map like that. And that's gonna, since I'm reversing the color map, it's gonna show me everywhere there isn't a problem. So instead, I'm gonna take the reverse color map off, and okay, good. So now we can only see places where there are problems, and I'll go ahead and let's see, we'll focus in on the rate over here, get a shorter list, and not really sure, thought I was sizing by population, but something, instead of maybe there's something in there that's making that non-numeric, but let's size by a number of cases instead. Maybe it's a data problem. Yeah, not really sure what's going on there. I may have a bug going on right now, but oh, there's the problem right there. It's max size because it's set to constrain it between 10 and 10. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a little more room to work with. And there we go. We can see things being sized by cases now. Now they're kind of spilling over to one another. So those guys have even thought about stuff like this. So what I'm going to do is in the Y direction, I'm going to give it a little padding. So I'll just go over here and let's see. We'll see if 3.4 is enough. If not, I'll keep going. And what I'm trying to do is just produce a little separation between these guys so they're not going to overlap. Alright, that's a little better. And I'm going to go ahead and switch the color map out to, let's see, to something that just has a sliding scale, but everything's going to get a color here. And I'm going to go ahead and save these over to an HTML file. And we'll just save that as test. Go over here and jump over here and reload and jump over to test, and there we can see that we do have, in fact, have the visualization saved about like we had specified here. And again, it's fully alive. We can filter on those things we care about, compare them side by side. And if you notice, this is just a file asset. So I mentioned this in other demonstrations, but I think it's important that we serialize out all the dependencies into a self-contained asset. So that way you can render it on a web server. It'll run fine behind a firewall or without a web server at all. That way you could email the visualizations back and forth to your friends. They do become somewhat large as they embed the data and the JavaScript dependencies inline, but I think it's a pretty good trade-off overall. Let's see what else would we want to do here. So let me jump over to this configuration window, And I'm just going to play around. I don't know if this is going to make sense or not, but I'm going to go ahead and change it to a line. Yeah, it doesn't. So, really, you have to think about your data set. You gotta, and what actually makes sense for that particular data set. But all we do here is really expose those capabilities to where you can put these types of things together pretty quickly without having to program. So I'm going to look at one more data set. It's a little less depressing than the AIDS data set. And college football 2016 season. And again, documentation. We're going to read the CSV. I'm going to view the data, make sure my data is actually there. And fortunately it is. Then we're going to select the columns that we care about here. And pretty much everything. So we've got team, yards per game, points per game, all that good stuff. And I'm gonna go ahead and disable these because I don't really care about them right now. And I'm gonna go ahead and re-execute. And we have a pretty good chart here that's showing us every team side by side with the points per game. We can go over here. We can change from points per game. We can quickly get to things like, well, Sam Houston scored what looks like 54.2 points per game. Pretty good. They must really have an easy schedule. And if you're a Sam Houston State fan, I apologize for that comment. But okay, let's again, we have color maps that have a lot of hard separation, 128 different colors, but really a lot of these colors end up being pretty similar, so it's kind of tough to tell the difference. Now I'm going to demonstrate some of the power of what we can do with Dex. So, well, instead of seeing all this, I would really like to see every stat side by side. But the problem is that all the stats are one per column, and TauCharts is really only going to show me one at a time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into table manipulation, and let's see, everything's numeric except for that one. So I'm gonna probably have to omit that one as well. But I'm going to go here and I'm going to group the columns, and I'm going to move it up here. And let's see, yeah, I can just do it there. And what I want to do, actually, let me move it up here so that way I can select a different set of columns. So I'm going to clear this out. So I'm going to select a whole new set of columns, and I really don't want this to run this go around, so I'm going to go ahead and run this, and this is going to basically introduce it to the data set so that way it sees the data first time through. And I'm gonna move all these guys over here, and I'm just going to call this stat. So that's going to be what it's going to do is it's going to create a name value pair called stat. It's going to opposite of flatten out. It's going to make it more of a row based data set. So I'm going to go ahead and clear this one and then re-execute, and what I want to see is now I've got 3 columns here. So I am going to put stat as the first column, team is the second column, and then the Y is going to, by default, you can remap it into config. It's going to be the stat value, and I'm going to re-enable this and execute. And then what we can see are each one of the stats. We have the team on the bottom and the stat value, so we can quickly get to things like games, points per game. Let me go ahead and only focus on points per game. Really nice. I love these legends that they support. Really nice stuff. And in this case, I think we can do a line chart. So I'm going to go here. Excuse me. And I'm going to go ahead and select the line chart. And we see every stat side by side mapped into a line chart. And we can also, again, filter only teams that have large values, so we can quickly get to things like show me. Let's see. Show me those teams that have, let's say, over 3,000 passing yards in a season. And then go over here. I can see Sam Houston State. Can't read that. Eastern Washington. Yeah, it's a short list. So conversely, let's take a look at some other stuff. Let's take a look at, say, teams that are heavily penalized. So let's look at penalty yards. So select that, and let's take a look at teams that have, looks like nobody has that many. Well, I guess that's a good thing. So, wow, I live in Jacksonville. So Jacksonville State, Alabama State, North Central team, North Carolina Central, I guess. Haven't really heard of that. So anyway, so those are the heavily penalized teams, and jump back to this, and let's see. I think now let's look at some of the other chart types while we're here. So I'm going to disable this, or actually I'll re-enable it, and I'll enable all these guys. And since we haven't run these guys yet, there's no data, but hit the execute. Let these other chart types populate here. Looks like we're working on the third one. And this may be why I threw a ton of RAM at it, because these charts are somewhat heavy, and 5 of them with a fairly large data set takes a little bit of time. Alright, so I guess it's all done rendering, so I'll dismiss that. Whoops. Bring that back to the foreground, close it out, and let's just take a quick look at these other chart types real quick. That's the scatter. We looked at that. Let that guy resize. So that's going to be the bar chart. Each team gets a stat side by side, and again, we can easily filter on those stats that we care about, like yards per game, and maybe pass yards. You know, we can just basically see the breakdown between passing and rushing yards. We can do the same thing with the horizontal bar charts. It's going to lay it out in a horizontal fashion instead, and probably it makes sense to move this to the Y if we're going to do that. Then we got the stacked bar charts. Not sure if it really makes sense for this data set, and it looks like it's not going to render, so it didn't make sense to do the horizontal stacking, because we didn't have a value on the y-axis, which is why that didn't work out. And then here we see every team side by side with every single one of these stats. So I think that's all I'm going to do for now, and hope you like what you see. And you know, if you haven't seen it before, check out TauCharts, because these are some really fantastic charting capabilities here, as hopefully I've demonstrated here, and really nice design. It seems like it's really evolving at a pretty good pace. And that's it for now. Thanks a lot, and until next time, thanks guys.